Good morning. Yeah, it's a kind of a very challenging presentation, mine, because most of you will, as he said, most of you will be asking yourself, what the hell is he doing here? You know, we're talking about qualitative. And in fact, quantum mechanics has very little to do with qualitative. However, as you will see, it may be useful, of course, if you know already everything about this new discipline called quantum cognition, which is pretty new. There's maybe less than 35 papers published, scientific papers in peer-reviewed like Nature, Science, and so on. Well, this may be a waste of time for me because I'm going to be introducing the topic to this type of audience because I feel qualitative have their say. Actually, I'm a big supporter of qualitative. And that's the reason I decided to come up here and talk to you about something which is completely alien or could be potentially completely alien to what you do in your daily job, but might be able to stimulate your thinking and help move qualitative forward. I've heard something very interesting earlier today when we said we want to know what qualitative will look like in 5 years down the road. Me too, totally agree. And also, how can qualitative do some foresight versus just looking in the rear window? I'm in it 100%. I already spoke about it a few years ago at the Febelmar Congress. The Belgians are amazing. Small country, but very lively and powerful consumer research industry. So, let's get into let's rock and roll. Maybe this way. Yep. Quantum mechanics. Right. Okay. Quantum mechanics is what actually physicists use to describe the way the universe works. Okay? So it's been there for 90 years. It's not something that you can challenge because there's truckload of stuff that has been developed and created and used and explained using quantum mechanics, dating back to the 1920s and so on. By the way, I'm so very happy to be here today because only last week there was the announcement of the first actual measurement of the existence of gravitational waves. And here I am. So very nice coincidence. So actually, I'm not a physicist. Nobody's perfect. I'm a statistician. But I'm a big supporter of qual, and I've been doing qual for over 25 years now. So I've taken all those formulas out of the presentation because I said to myself, this audience is interested in the logic. And they're going to be able to follow the logic pretty easily. That's my experience of a quarter of a century dealing with qualitative people. And they also will be very, very interested because they have something that no other researcher has, which is sensitivity. Okay? Qualitative has some specific features that has helped qualitative flourish, stay fresh, and stay relevant. And I want to hope that qualitative will stay fresh and relevant in the future as well. So that's the reason why no formulas are in there, and maybe just a few, just to reassure myself, you know, I'm a quant at the end of the day, so formulas are my comfort zone. And I want to start to being provocative. This is what I prefer, being provocative, okay? So, consumers are irrational. You just said it. You know, that stupid lady is my wife. Yeah, I totally agree. I've been married to the stupid lady for 23 years. And actually, there is a trend out there. I'm joining a new party. The party that says consumers do not exist. It's already out there. It was discussed last year in September. And I've discussed this with a lot of people, with a lot of peers that I respect a lot within the consumer research industry by saying, okay, consumers do not exist. let's try to make a statement out of this. 50 years ago, there was this model, the prevailing model. The framework was people are rational. And what they're trying to do when they are consumers is to maximize their individual utility function. I'm purchasing this, I'm doing that, I'm buying this brand because it gives me something. So there was this kind of function that people would tend to maximize, and the more utility, the more they would invest and spend, and so on and so forth. Actually, today, by observing, we have observed, and I think you've all been there, you've all observed consumer behaviors which are absolutely not rational, okay? Think about it, I'm pretty sure you've met them. And also, the mere idea of being a consumer is being challenged. Actually, the kind of party I'm secretly adhering to says, okay, people are there and their only purpose is living their lives the way they think best. People become consumers several times a day. There's a study out there that claims that people make over 100, some of them make over 100 decisions on a daily basis. So people become consumers whenever they need to buy a product, use a service, or make a decision. But nonetheless, we need to maybe abandon the idea that the consumer is there and she's a lady and she's 35 to 45, has 2 kids and goes to the supermarket. That's old stuff, okay? And actually, what we will discover is that not only consumers are people and not vice versa, but also that a lot of things that they do, we cannot make sense of. There is no way, neither in qualitative nor in quantitative, and I'm going to get to this in a second. Actually, the first hint could be the consumer and the person could be in a state of superposition. And superposition is a word that you will see in a minute. As a research practitioner, as a quant, you all know about this. This has been presented to me already 30 years ago. We have an array of tools, okay? And this is the old prevailing model. There's the behaviors which are conscious. It's like the skin of the peach or the peel. Then there's the subconscious level that's more like the attitudes that actually influence behaviors. And then there's the unconscious level, which is made of the motivations. And when I joined the industry almost 30 years ago, qualitative was called motivational research, because the only single most important question that people need to ask from a qualitative research is why? No one else can give you the why. You're the only ones in the world who are, to me, are entitled to answer the question why people do what they do. As a quant, I can tell you the when, the what, the who, the how, much better than you, but I can never be able to answer the question why. Why you can. However, in the past, we thought that this framework was deterministic, okay? People behave like this because they have this attitude, they're in favor, they're against, the use of mobile phone versus internet, and then unconsciously they have this deep down core insights or motivations, and you would discover the motivations, and by discovering the motivations, you would help the companies create better products that fit the consumer unconscious motivations, and that was the prevailing model until a few years back. So that was deterministic. Unfortunately, this is not the case. This model is not deterministic. If you try to model from a scientific standpoint, you will not succeed. Maybe this is much more of a probabilistic thing. So we're starting to move away from the certainty of the determinism that was prevailing over 25 to up until 5 years ago, and some of that stuff is still out there alive and kicking. but maybe having a probabilistic view will help us better understand. Actually, as a research buyer, I'm a client, I know that when I have a problem, there is an arsenal, there's a whole array of tools that I can use to address my issue. And I've tried to classify them in 4 buckets, okay? The first one is psychology. That's your comfort zone. This is qualitative. You're using heuristics, okay? Yours is more of an art than a science from a scientific standpoint. That's also good. Then there's psychometrics. Psychometrics, I was used to be a big fan of starting from 20 years ago, okay? This is what it's technically known as cognitive science. Therefore, it's quantitative, but it's still the same as doing qualitative. We want to be able to quantitatively map what's going on in the consumers or in people's minds. Then there's now some new stuff out there, okay? I'm pretty positive you've heard about talking about biometrics. Biometrics stems from the idea that, well, as people can lie, consciously, unconsciously, because it's a cultural thing, it's linked to the context, there's plenty of reason why people can lie to you when sometimes they don't even know. Okay? When you ask questions and they don't know the answer, a consumer will make it up for you. And that's something, thank you for acknowledging. So this is what I like about qualitative, that they are not afraid of admitting that quantitative is different. Okay, so biometrics say, as people lie, it's easy. We go beyond the declarative and we see what their body response is that doesn't lie. So far, so good. However, there's a little bit of things that we need to understand whether, again, biometrics at the current state, and I've done biometrics and I've done neurometrics, I'm always one who pokes their nose in there before I say yes or no. I go there and scratch and scratch and scratch until I dig and find okay, is this good or not? Biometrics, it's still in its infancy, okay? What we can see are very general things about, okay, arousal, for example. What does it tell me? That you're aroused by seeing something? Okay. It's like, if you imagine in a focus group discussion, you just discover your participants are alive. Okay? Very useful, very business compelling, your insight's going to be winning. So this is still something we need to dig into. It's still in its infancy because we want explanatory. We want to be able to determine that what is going on in the body as a response to the stimulus, whether it is an ad, whether it is a concept, whether it's a fragrance, this is my business, whether it is whatever stimulus you're going to show them, you want to understand what the body of the respondents tells you. Well, for the moment, from a scientific standpoint, we're not able to decode a lot of things. If you do a peer review analysis of all the theories out there, what's sure is that, he gave a kind of response or he gave no response. Not very useful. However, we need to be on the watch out for this because in the next 10 years, there's going to be stuff that will come out as we have more diagnostic tools and we form and shape the models of how our brain and our body works. And this brings us to neurometrics. Personally, I hate the word neuromarketing. Neurometrics is a different thing. So again, here the distinction between biometrics and neurometrics is biometrics gives you the feedback on what your body tells you. Neurometrics, you need to look at what's happening inside the brain. This is the distinction that I make, okay? And I'm in agreement with a couple of people who've been doing neurometrics for the past 25 years. We sat down and discussed out of this. I'm a taxonomist by nature, so I like to put people and stuff in very neat, organized boxes. So neurometrics, for example, fMRI is neurometrics. EEG might be more biometrics than neurometrics because you don't see what's going on in the brain. You just see an electrical signal. Neurometrics is still in its infancy. I've been digging and digging, And of course, there will be a lot of progress over the next few years. For example, one approach I've seen that could be applied to neurometrics is what IBM has been doing with Watson, their new system for cognitive computing. That could be applied to neurometrics. That approach of supervised and unsupervised machine learning could give us a lot of insights by analyzing tons and tons and tons of observation and deriving by machine learning what the laws are. But again, the difference is correlation versus causation. For the moment, with fMRI, we see that some areas of the brain are activated when you get the person to see something, to touch something, to taste something, to feel, to listen to something, okay? When there's a sensory stimulus, there is an activation in the brain. Some of them are automatic. I mean, if I'm speaking, of course my broca, otherwise, this is how it's hardwired. However, there's plenty of areas in the brain for many, many stimuli, and this is correlation. It's not yet causation, okay? So maybe there could be potentially a new paradigm that could be sitting there together with the other four. But why the hell do we need a new paradigm, you would say? Well, we may need a new paradigm because the existing ones are unable to explain what we need to explain, the complexity of human decision-making, of human thinking. So if we have something new and different to try, why don't we try it? And here I'm listing a number of these, and it's just my personal pick. Actually, I found tons and tons and tons of these little things. Some of them are very difficult to understand, others are pretty easy. However, this is what I call the paradoxes, okay? The first one, and this I want to see some of you who acknowledge. Have you ever participated or moderated group discussions when people can have inner conflicts, being undecided, being hesitating, being torn in two, in poetics? Actually, there's a more scientific way of defining this, which is the concept, the psychological concept of ambivalence, okay? So feeling two emotions at the same time. I have listed here some examples, okay, coming from different contexts and cultures, because in qualitative, and you're the one who've been teaching me, in qualitative, context and culture are something you cannot make abstraction from. So the lady pictured here is laughing and crying at the same time. Did it ever happen to you to see somebody doing this? Or is it just something invented in literature, in scientific literature? Actually, this lady is feeling two emotions at the same time, and two contrasting emotions, laughing and crying. There are other examples of ambivalence. The Brazilian concept of saudade, which is feeling two different emotions at the same time. The German Sehnsucht, the British bittersweet, and the Japanese mono no aware. All of these are examples of feeling a couple of emotions at the same time. The current models struggle with this, not qualitative. That's why you're the first one ever, and this is not your lucky day, to hear this presentation. It's never been presented before. Uncertainty. Uncertainty is something I have seen people dealing with in qual for a number of years. It doesn't happen in quant. They just say, no, this is not taken into consideration. Indetermination of state. Indetermination of state is something very, very powerful because it's a scientific way to deal with something that you cannot measure, but it's there, and you should live with it, and that's fine. I mean, you don't have to kill yourself because you just cannot explain everything. I want to read to you the Linda problem, okay? The Linda problem is something that may be interesting for you. And I want to read it to you exactly, and do it with you together, so please raise your hands. Now, if you can stop looking at your mobile phones, because you're all dominant, dominant mobiles, I'm going to read it to you, the Linda problem, as it was expressed by Tversky and Kahneman in 1980-something. Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy. As a student, she was deeply concerned with the issue of discrimination and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Okay, we know a little bit about this lady. So, which of the following, according to your own opinion, is more probable? And please raise your hand. I'm going to read both of them. Okay, we're going to do it scientifically. So I'm going to read you the two options. You're going to listen, and then I say, okay, who is in favor of option 1? And you raise your hand. Who is in favor of option 2? And then you raise your hand, and then we will count. This is an experiment. So Linda, according to option 1, is a bank teller. According to option 2, Linda is a bank teller and is active in the feminist movement. Okay, so who is in favor of option 1? Please raise your hands. 8. Who is in favor of option 2? Everybody else. Okay, you just violated the law of total probability. This is, and this experiment has been repeated under every type of condition. There's a ton of literature on this that you can read. It's pretty straightforward, and it just makes you think, why people say this? Why do people violate the law of total probability? Because we know that the probability, from a quantitative standpoint, according to Kolmogorov and I mean the classic probability theory, being a bank teller, okay, is one thing. Being a feminist is another. However, the probability of being a bank teller and a feminist cannot be higher than the sum of their components. You know, otherwise it's a violation of the law. It doesn't work. You're being irrational, and the majority of you has just done so. Okay, so let's have another look at a few other examples. We need to move on. Indetermination of state, the juror dilemma. Okay, what's going on in a jury when people are trying to decide, is this guy guilty, is this guy innocent? Okay, and I think you've seen this, and this so much relates to me personally. Okay, according to the classical theory, there's a state space, and you go from, it's like on, off, light on, light off. I think it's guilty one day, then the other I think it's innocent, and you hesitate and you fluctuate between this path. Actually, in the moderation, we discovered that this is not true. This could be a superposition of states, okay, where you think the guy is both guilty and innocent at the same time. It happens to me all the time when I need to order a dessert in a restaurant. I want them all, and then, as my friends know, I will ask them, okay, can I try yours now? Question order effects. We all know this. In qualitative, you know, I was taught maybe 25 years ago, Clara was there, that when you do in a focus group, you disclose information to the respondents, it's like opening a door. You can no longer close it or pretend that you haven't told them something, because inevitably they will feed it back to you. So order matters even in qualitative. Think about when you introduce a brand, it changes the perception of everything. In quantitative, there's question order effects. Here you've got an example. I don't have time to go through the details, but however, here again, it doesn't work. There's here, the judgments influenced by context, again, Tversky. Look at, the question was easy, which face is more similar to the one above. 42% in this case say the one on the right hand, 44% on the left hand. If we just change one the responses change dramatically. This is the demonstration that the context and culture influence how people respond. So maybe we now have the chance of finding a new paradigm. There's a new type of metric that helps us in solving these issues, and it's called quantum probability. These are the quantum principles. I would love to have time to discuss all of these in detail with you. Actually, it will take much more than the 15, 20 minutes I have. However, you will see that some of those principles are really helpful. Why? Well, because quantum theory has been used to describe how the universe works. Actually, this is the latest and most updated map of the known universe that I've seen. You're there. Oh, sorry. You're here. Yep. And how do quantum help us? How does quantum help in qualitative research? Why am I here talking to you and not to some kind of physicist? Well, people choices, you know already that people choices are irrational. You know already that the logic of incompatible events. You know about the principle. Although it is all expressed in a way which might sound alien to you, if you think about it, this is something you've already met in your daily job. Okay, randomness creates a pattern of non-predictability. It means that actually you're facing the unknown. This is something that quantitative people do not live with. People working in qual say, okay, we still don't know, but we will learn something, we will explore, we will dig. That's what I like about what you do. Question order effects, with quantum probability, they can perfectly be taken into account. I'm not getting into the mathematics, it's Hilbert spaces, but it's not that difficult, okay? It's something that in a multidisciplinary way, multidisciplinary teams are all the rage today. I've seen designers work with qualitative, who work with physicists, who work with people, strategists, and so on and so forth, and they are the ones who are able to bring something new and different to the table. Collapse. Do you know the Schrödinger's cat, who's both dead and alive at the same time? Well, the idea of collapse is that this is what may be going on in people's minds, actually, how people think, and when you measure it, it collapses to one single measurement. So, actually, there's a lot of literature that I've found where we can apply these principles in a completely new way. And I'm colorblind. I discovered it a bit late in my life. I never knew. I thought everybody was seeing colors like me when people said, you're dressed in a very strange way. And then they realized. Okay, it's like this new perspective, for me, it's like a new technology enabled me to see colors as they really are. That's how I think we could position, in a qualitative way, the contribution of quantum mechanics to the study of cognition. And actually now, my questions to you. And first, a reassurance. One, this is not alien stuff, because there are ways, okay, they define compatibility. Compatibility is not immediate, but it's not difficult to gauge. It's simply when you don't have the, when you can answer two questions simultaneously, and the order in which you ask the question doesn't matter. Then classical probability and quantum probability will give you exactly the same results. It's like quantum is able to incorporate a classic probability into a bigger and new perspective. And also, this can be an additional tool. So actually, in consumer research, I've tried and scored the whole web. There is nothing. There is absolutely nothing. All the trials have been done in academia, and it's like people watching dots moving on a screen, and then by estimating whether the dots are predominantly moving left or right or up or down, then I'll say, okay, yeah, it's all good, but I want to do something more. This perspective to me is promising, and that's the reason why I'm here. I want to study this and I want the help of people with qualitative experience. Exploratory research, understanding why, collecting data, trying to dig into and comparing what's going on in the normal human paradigm, what you do every day, versus this new paradigm, and comparing the results, listing them all together, and seeing whether we can find something that takes us and our understanding of decision-making. Because if this works, there's one promise at the end of the tunnel. I know it's a long tunnel, and okay, for budget reasons, the light has been switched off, but there's a promise at the end, which is prediction, And this goes back to what I heard this morning, okay? How can we support qualitative making foresights? Foresights, to me, is a way of, it's another way, it's more sexy, foresight, than prediction, but prediction is very much foresight. Being able to study what's going on today, and thanks to a scientific model, which is, I know, the last chart, which is working on a theory, applying the theory, and then scientifically, and moving out of heuristics. That's the only thing that will be required of qualitative. You've been working with algorithms. It's not difficult. You've seen the big data, and that's also why I'm talking to you. I've seen other types of disciplines taking over. Think big data, okay? I'm doing big data. We're going to be discussing it tomorrow. You use a lot of machine learning, backpropagating neural networks. It's a world of wonderful algorithms. And then when you get the results, you knock on the door of qualitative and say, can you help me make sense of this? That's why I want to start from the beginning. So there's a lot of need here to apply this paradigm with experiments and validation. So if you're interested, just get in touch. Thank you.